Welcome everybody to Roll to Cast. This is the post-season transmission. This is the wrap-up episode for this here season 8 that you've probably, hopefully, please say you've finished it before you've come to this episode.
I've just got it on random.
Start here.
Those that are unaware, this is kind of our chance to debrief, to talk about the season that was, amongst ourselves, favourite moments, least favourite moments, questions we may have, but also questions you may have. We've extended this transmission, sent our own little beacon out, and we've asked for you to ask you a little question-y poos, and that's what we're going to be doing here today.
Oh, how cute.
How's everyone feeling?
Good.
Oh,
we've been hard at it today.
Pretty wiped, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have been recording the following season. Can we announce at the end of this episode what the following season is?
Sure, because
Yeah.
I think by this time, people will know.
Yeah, and if you don't know...
People will know.
If you don't know, hang out to the end of this episode, and our new GM, Ellen, whose turn it is, will reveal.
Oh, we couldn't get
everything.
Brennan Lee Mulligan? Fuck.
Nah.
Shit.
So maybe next time.
I love it.
The next thing we'll do.
He's doing season 10.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Stay tuned.
But this is Starfinder, baby. And I think one of the first things that we can talk to and talk about and talk with is our brand new cast member for this season, in Karma.
Woo!
Yeah, I was going to say, speak for yourselves. I haven't been here all day. I've just gotten here. So I'm...
And speak for ourselves, we did.
I think I'm a little more with it. Is that okay to say?
Down with the kids.
Lucid.
So-
Is it okay
lucid,
to
that's
say?
the word.
So
Yes.
from that experience of lucidity, what was it like playing with us on Roll the Cast?
Yeah, coming into this whole... Because it's one thing to, like, play with a new group and, like, a new system. But this was that plus being
This was all of
recorded
it.
in perpetuity until for
Yeah.
long after you die.
Forever.
Forever and ever. Yeah, it was like a lot of those layers, but I think, I mean, it wasn't the first time that I've role played with you guys, so it was
No,
it was okay from that aspect.
I was going to say, what came first? Us role-playing casually together, or did we start Starfinder first? Like,
We
what
done
was the
Mouse
crossover?
Guard,
We
right?
did Mouse
We
Guard.
did Mouse
Could
Guard
remember what
first.
came first.
We did Mouse Guard almost in preparation for this season.
That's
Yeah.
right.
To get Karma kind of acclimated to how we as
to the group.
I was going to say a foursome, and that's probably wrong.
Acclimated to this foursome.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I think that made it, easy in terms of, like, I know you guys, personality and all of that was pretty straightforward, and none of that was a surprise to me, but definitely the fact that it was being recorded was the one hurdle for me. Like, I was cool with learning the system, I was cool with all of that, but constantly just forgetting that was kind of the goal, was to, step one, speak into the mic. Like, things like that was like the last thing on my
Harder
mind.
than you
So
think.
honestly.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So that was kind of like always the last thing on my mind, and then I would suddenly remember and be like, oh god, I have to, think about that.
It's an entertainment product.
Yeah. But no, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us. I
Yeah.
thought you were great.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's always wonderful to have like a new guest on Rollcast because it brings this fresh air in this dank, dusty fucking studio. Because we all do know each other and know how we kind of inherently play and all of that. But then having you come into the studio, it's just like, whoa, such a rush of energy.
Yeah.
And it feels so fun. And I love having guests.
It's kind of interesting to think about like what could have been as well, because I know that the Yosoki wasn't your initial character pitch, because I know initially you'd thought about potentially playing an android before.
What?
Before Ellen had taken the role of android. I remember you talked potentially about
Dibs.
flirting with that.
Yeah.
And I guess I was going to ask as well, do you gravitate to sci-fi stories very often, or is this kind of outside of your comfort zone in terms of the kind of stories or media you engage with? Like, kind of what's your flirtation with sci-fi, and especially after the fact now that you've done it?
Yes, for sure. I think that's honestly why I was immediately drawn to playing an android, because I do really like sci-fi, and it's one of my favorite genres in general, and so that is instantly kind of the most sci-fi option. And I think that's why I was drawn to it straight away. I was thinking about it, and I just didn't have any strong inclinations of like a particularly character or personality that went along with that. Like, I liked the idea of it, but there wasn't much else going on. And then when I was looking through the races and I was reading about Yosoki's, I was like, oh, there's immediately a picture in my head of who this guy is. And so it became very easy to flesh that out. And so I switched tactics pretty early on after starting to read the kind of source book.
Because I know no one picked Vesk, which was actually the biggest surprise to me. I was so sure Phil was going to pick a Vesk.
A big, they're the big
angry lizard folk.
Big lizard man.
Big militaristic lizard folk.
No, I needed another robot companion. Apparently. Which has got nothing to do with the race. I could have been a Vesk engineer.
You could have still been an engineer.
Yeah, that's true. No, I found the telepathic bugs to be most interesting from a sci-fi perspective. I love sci-fi as well, and I love the kind of, Strange New Worlds kind of aspect of it. And so the kind of curious, collaborative idea behind the Sheeran really appealed to me.
And I know for Ellen, for you as well, one thing that you'd been very open about is that this is like one of your least prepped seasons in terms of the way you approach the character.
Oh yeah,
which I always found interesting because obviously
sounds unprofessional of me to say, but
this is easily my least prepared season as a GM. Like comparatively to Pulp Cthulhu, this is far and away a very under prepped season in terms of how I approached it. But I was kind of curious, how that. Not only affected your stress levels, but also because you are the protagonist of this story. This is Ada's story.
It was one thing to be had the conversation. Hey Sean, I'm really swamped with other projects. I'm coming up towards Fringe time, and I'm doing my own solo show, and all of these other projects kind of coinciding. So it's going to be very I've got a main idea, and that's where everything kind of hinges on. That's going to make me decide my race. That's going to make me decide my class, and all of the kind of role play is just going to follow on that really, really, really strong idea. And then you were like, oh, I'm thinking this is going to be your character's story. You're going to be the protagonist. I was like, cool.
Well, fun.
Cool. No worries. I've deliberately picked a character that's got a very flat effect and is learning about emotions on the fly. Cool. No.
Well, that means you've got the most room to grow, right? So,
and it very much felt that kind of the old cliche of sometimes the protagonist, especially in a video game, is the most not that your character was boring, but it is the most flat, easy character because you're meant to impose yourself onto the main character of a video game. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
But it was so cool, especially from a sci-fi setting, to go, oh, here's a character that literally is learning as they go, which is kind of what also was the impulse for me to instigate the conflict that I did, which is what if they weren't aware of their past? And what if things had happened to them without their consent, without their knowledge?
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely had the most to be learning throughout the season, which I think worked for that.
Yeah, where I feel, Phil's pointing across the table.
This is the one I want to know about.
Yeah.
Where was the origin for this unholy devotion to a dark power? Where did that come from?
I would love to know about this from Chris as well, because what's funny is Chris and I did not collaborate on this. I gave everyone carte blanche to come up with the character that they wanted to come up with.
Yeah.
And it was only after, Chris was the final piece of the puzzle, because I was struggling on exactly where I was going to go in terms of where the antagonistic conflict would settle on. And as soon as Chris was like, oh, I'm a member of the Cult of the Devourer, I was like, oh, fucking perfect. Because I know the Cult of the Devourer. I just don't know how you know the Cult of the Devourer. So yeah, I'm curious about this too.
This is probably one of the characters I've spent the most amount of time on, the most amount of research, the most amount of voice practice. Zahak's voice was not supposed to sound as it sounded, but I picked something and went with it. But I spent probably, and Karma and I are dating, and so it was a big joy to be able to bring my boyfriend into the podcast and collaborate with him. So there was a lot of consideration for how those characters were supposed to work, and when you've built character background with another player, both of you kind of trust each other to have justified decisions and to have comprehensive understanding of how they're going to work, right? There's no sense in having characters who are on side with each other if you're constantly having to discover what your character is going to do in that moment. You kind of have to know it so that you can rely on each other, so that they can build like camaraderie there. Like,
There's that built-in background already ready to go.
Exactly, because otherwise what's the point, right? If you're still discovering your own character and you've got a partner, then you aren't then they have nothing to work with.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be kind of strong in that mode. And I remember Sean in the pre-discussion discussing the influences for the game.
Yeah.
Right. And we had this conversation in pre-production before we all recorded, before any of our like episode 0
Before
chat.
the pre-season
Yeah,
chat. Yeah.
exactly right. Was Sean saying, it's a bit like Firefly and it's a bit like Mass Effect. And I know Sean and Ellen have played Dragon Age and Mass Effect and the kind of BioWare series, right? They're fairly familiar with those BioWare series. And I drew influence from the first BioWare game that is kind of popularized the series and kind of set a lot of precedents, which is Baldur's Gate 1. In Baldur's Gate 1, you leave your kind of like native town as your protagonist, and you meet two people along the path, and they're fucking evil. They're just bad people.
Okay.
But because the game is set out in such a way, they appear to be good people. You inherently trust them.
So
Right?
you can bring them on board.
You bring them into your party. They're like the first team that you get, along with another person that you grew up with, right? She's kind of like your thief, and then you met these two people. They give you healing potions. They say, hello, hi, welcome, what are you here for?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're a smart, savvy person, you go into their backstory and you see that they're evil. But if you're not, they're just two people that you've picked up along the way. And so
Sounds familiar.
Right? And so
Hey, we've all been
It's
there.
all coming together now.
And so I was very aware of the fact that I wanted to play those characters. One of them is a wizard, one of them is a spellcaster, and one of them a human spellcaster, and one of them is a halfling fighter rogue. And I was like, okay, Karma seems to be leaning towards this rogue sort of character. I can play this kind of the kind of what is it? The big to your small. The kind of like there's the kind of antithetical.
The serious to my batshit crazy.
So the batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And so all of that
The
was
rock
kind of
steady to your bebop.
there you go.
Yes.
And so all of that was kind of fitting in together, and I'm like, great, cool, this is a reasonable character. I stole the voice from John Irenicus from Baldur's Gate 2, and I was like, cool. This is all tracking. And I was like, well, is that going to be fun to play with? Is playing just a flat-out evil character going to be fun to play with? And I was like, yes, because he doesn't have to be evil.
Like all the time.
Well, and this is sort of the thing, and the promise I made to myself was that we have a protagonist, and we kind of established that fairly early. I was like, my character is going to be entirely malleable to them.
Right.
Because in the BioWare games, when you as the protagonist go out and talk to your like party members, whether you're like, you know, in Dragon Age and you're campfiring and you give them gifts or you chat to them, or you're in like Mass Effect or whatever, you can convince them to change their alignment, to shift their perspective. And so I was like, oh, great, I'll be that character.
Yeah.
And so the concept was, I'll play a nihilist. I'll play a young nihilist, because Zahak is really, really young. He's quite naive. And he's flexible to the party. The party needs a healer. There we go. That's a character.
So what was your history, the two of you? Because we never kind of
No, we
dug it
picked-
out of you.
It was seemed like the no wrong answers picked you up as a kind of pair. You had your own history together, just as Clink and Arda kind of had their own, you know. So we never quite got the full
we know you're a criminal.
cool
Well, yes.
sketchings there. Yeah,
Yeah, I started by, because we built our characters kind of together, but I finished mine first, and I kind of have built this backstory of basically a speed run of his whole life of like Akaton, and then going to several other locations, you know, being caught by several different
Versailles.
going to Versailles, kind of fucking things up there, being chased out off the planet by their government, and then fleeing to the diaspora, where obviously he eventually became a free captain for a while. And then it wasn't until Chris had finished building Zahak that we talked about why they were drawn to each other in the first place, which we ended up falling on it being because Pinch is so unpredictable and chaotic. He's chaotic neutral. He's not necessarily going to be evil all the time, but he very much doesn't care about a lot of what other people are doing. And I think it was you, Chris, who said like Zahak adopts him as an agent of chaos, essentially.
Yeah,
He's like, I have this tiny destructive thing that will follow me if I protect him. So why not bring him
Right.
along and kind of
Revel in the chaos that he creates.
Yes, kind of forge a path for me to, as the stronger one of the duo,
Right.
for him to kind of forge a path for me to then just wreak havoc.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So there are a couple of questions that the audience, our listeners, have given us that will flesh out some of those things. But is there any? I'll open up to you guys. Is there any questions that you had for me? We usually open up a player to GM section as well. Are there any questions that you want to ask of me?
Is there anything we missed? Any details or like big reveals that we should have found?
Anything we just missed, like dodged completely.
And you're like, damn, I wish they had discovered that breadcrumb that I left for them.
No, and that's predominantly because I adopted a very different way of writing this season.
Yeah.
Where I wrote in batches. Whereas I had not written the second recording at the time that we recorded the first recording.
Yeah.
I then was I knew dot points. I knew the one thing that I knew for certain, and this is something that we'll get into later, but the whole crux of the season was boiling down to me getting you onto the Omen Bringer and having the standoff between Zahak and Arda.
So you had an end point. And you just
I was
needed us to get you
orchestrating
there.
towards that point. I was like, if I can get just a big standoff between you two, having no idea where Pinch and where Clink were at this point, because at this point, I didn't know how attached they were as secondary characters.
Yeah.
I just needed you two in that room. And I had different points peppered in, but everything else I was like, I don't quite know. And I want to be malleable to what happens at each recording. Also, I was pressed for time.
Yeah.
But I was like, let's see what happens if I'm writing as we go, because there'll be things that I can discover. Dr. Zvoon didn't come in until the night before we recorded.
Oh, okay.
That was a break where I was like, oh, that's where the story's heading.
Right.
And Dr. Zvoon is actually a character from my casual group.
Oh, right. Okay.
I've got a friend, Charlotte, who plays in my casual Starfinder game, and I was like, I want to share. Can I borrow your character, Dr. Zvoon? Can I use her? She gave me her character sheet, and that's what I used for the fight with the glass serpent.
Oh, nice.
That's
So
nice.
I got to use her character with her permission, which was very lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, in answer to your question, because of that, because I was able to be more malleable in those moments, I would very much situate. I reckon they're going to do one of a couple of things, and I had accounted for, like, if you do this, I can still get you to here, sort of thing. So it was actually I was a lot better prepared. And also by this point, you guys are very kind and were like, we know where we're going with this, so we can like head towards that sort of thing.
Is there anything that you're like, fully, I don't want to answer that. Like, I want to keep that as open-ended as possible. Like, because
I'm happy to
ask.
I'm happy to answer anything.
No, but is there anything that you're like, no, I don't like? There, definitively, I want to
Like you
keep that
don't have an answer,
open-ended.
kind of.
Yeah,
There is no answer to
Yeah.
that question. It's ambiguous.
you know what I mean. Like any kind of big puzzles that, like, I know some of our fans have been asking, oh, you know, what's happened here, and like, or like, we've been puzzling a lot of the time about cures for Arda.
Yes.
And I'm kind
Is
of
there a
like,
cure for
yeah,
Arda? Yeah.
So,
you know what
I
I
mean,
mean? Because
I-
I'm like, it's one of those things because where we leave in the season, it is so open-ended.
Yes.
You know, but I guess that's up to you as the GM.
I can answer that question if
yeah,
you'd like.
if you would like, yeah.
There's no cure.
Yeah. Cool.
She eventually will die. How long that takes
Same.
is
Relatable.
Yeah.
And
Hashtag.
Just
like,
as any android as well. Like,
but I wanted to explore this idea of like, what if like there's a character that's had the choice taken away though, like that every android has a choice, a decision, and usually it's like every 100 years or so they go, okay, cool, that's it's done for me. But you know, and I talked about this with
Yeah.
you. But I thought, you know, what does an android do with their time now that it's been chosen for them? And they don't quite know. Maybe at some point she might figure out exactly how long she has. But other than that, it's been a choice that's taken away from her, but she has the decision to help others.
The signal fucked up everybody on the Omenbringer. Would it have done that to the whole of the Pact Worlds, or would it have just triggered the regeneration of all the androids?
What you saw, like the idea behind that is like pretty simple, is that, you know, for every android triggers a renewal. For everyone else, fucks them up.
Turns them into
It'd
that.
be that on a mass scale.
cool. That would have been pretty bad.
Catastrophic.
The whole, and it would have reached across the pack pods, right? That's the idea.
That's the
okay,
idea.
so what would you have done if Chris was faster and he pressed the button?
So there is a
There's a question.
There's a
for
question
that,
about
yeah.
that, isn't
And
there? I mean,
will-
I want to know. So
and I'll also just credit them as well, just so we can.
If you have a question that the players also think, guess what? You skip the queue.
because I need to know. Inquiring minds need to know.
Yeah.
Skiver or Skiver 619. How much different would the ending be if Chris won the role instead of Ellen? Apart from the obvious, of course. Look, the pretty simple is like this is what I mean by from a mechanics perspective. Had Chris set off the beacon, first of all, the same thing happens. The chase still occurs because the amount of power that it takes to summon this thing, the thing's going to self-destruct. Like it's going to explode as a result, right? So
It's going to tear itself apart during activation.
being able to do that. So that's
and it's
number one.
also going to wake up all the enemies, right?
Yes. So all that stays the same.
Cool.
It becomes a dire ending though. Like
That's it. Literally,
he gets
we
what he
annihilate
wants. Everyone gets annihilated. Like it would have been like I once I decided that the cult of a devourer was involved, and I also accepted that Chris was Zahak was a member of that. I had to accept and factor in the possibility that we have a nihilistic ending, and it would have been the first in Roll to Cast.
So we would have potentially gotten off the Omen Bringer. It detonated, and then we just all would have died.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we have a couple minutes to spare. What do you
Yeah.
all want to do?
This
you
is
would have had one more roleplay moment.
And this is my question for Karma as well, because obviously Pinch is like
Yes.
very, very chaotic, but to me seems like thinks very much in the now and not like longer term.
yeah.
Like is on board with the idea of like, oh, this thing is just like going to affect androids. Like, what's that realization that it's like, no, you died too. Like, is
Yeah.
Pinch still on board with that? Because I get the sense that he wouldn't be, but I'm not I'm not the player or the character.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think there's one moment where I say it in the second to last episode, but it doesn't get... Then a lot's happening, so I don't think it doesn't get delved into.
You say that you're like, Chris didn't actually answer that. So.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
hang on, I need to do a percent, like, or a whatever it was, like, in sense motive
sense
on Zahak
motive.
to figure out if we're still on the same side, because very much Pinch, and this is also kind of the reverse of what I was explaining before about why Zahak likes Pinch. The reason Pinch likes Zahak is obviously he serves as really good protection for Pinch, who loves to get himself into dangerous situations and then barely, squeeze out of them. And so he also is not... Pinch didn't have any interest in... He has no interest in other people's kind of religions and other people's, like, that kind of thing. He's never thought to really delve that deep. So he's like, I understand you want to cause destruction and chaos. I'm here for that. And then the
Not when
second...
destruction and chaos affects me.
The second where
Yeah,
it's like,
that's right.
but they're literally what you were saying before we started recording, Ellen, is like, once Pitch is like, wait, there are consequences for me? I'm out.
Which, if Chris had succeeded in the role, would
Yeah.
have been like, you'd have maybe 1 minute before
Yes.
Pinch dies to be like, wait,
Yeah, exactly.
what the fuck?
I think I don't know what happens in that situation, but I don't know if I don't know if Pinch even is trying to get off the ship at that point. I think he's just trying to comprehend that the end is coming for him now, and he's like, hang on a minute, this is not how it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
So in that moment, it's like he still appreciates, the connection he's got with Zahak and all of that, but he's like, well, hang on, I was here for about 80% of what you were saying, and then you really lost me at the last hurdle. Even if there was a way for Pinch and Zahak to have survived and no one else to have survived, Pinch is not interested in a world where there's no conflict for him to fight against, and there's nothing for him to do that's interesting to him.
Yeah.
If there's no one to rob, then if there's no
What's
one,
the point?
if there's no enemy to just escape from, barely make it out of, then it's not exciting for him. So
Yeah.
What was favorite moments for people?
It's a lot.
It was a very fun season.
Like
Absolutely.
I just like all the whooping and cheering at the end is like indicative of how high the stakes were, the tension, everything like flying past, the fact that there was like a mystery, action adventure. Like it really is just a nice, neat little package of like so many of the wonderful staples of sci-fi. I mean, I personally really enjoyed, like I said this before recording, I love Clink. I like, again, if Clink has 0 fans, I'm dead. But like it was the like in between all the action packed stuff, I loved the quiet contemplative moments of this season that really kind of like helped cinch into that central theme of legacy and death and meaning and finding meaning even though the end is near, or the sword of Damocles is always like hanging over your head. And the little scene between Ada and Clink where Clink is really upset about not being able to find a cure.
Yes, I was going to highlight that scene.
And they just kind of they talk it out, and it's a really little lovely meditation on meaning and who we leave behind and how we affect each other's lives.
What being a friend means, and like being kind of helpless when you're a friend. I think we can all, yes, it's sci-fi, right? But we can all relate, I think, to sometimes when someone you love, you care about deeply in whatever kind of relationship is going through something, and you want to help them, but you don't have the capacity, or it's not a problem that can be helped. It's just something you have to be there for.
Yeah.
It felt very human to me, that exploring that with you. It felt really grounded, and I really brought a dimension to the character that I really, really liked.
Yeah.
I personally liked the planet hopping. It's hard to find like moments, but I like the fact that it took us Absalom Station, Eoxian wastes, like I loved the creepy abandoned facility. I thought it was atmospheric as balls. It was great. The diaspora, and the river and the vortex that's there.
The space fish.
Yeah, I think you really captured those, like the set pieces, like the feeling of the sci-fi locations. So I loved like turning up somewhere new every time, and just like I found myself over and over again this season just like closing my eyes and just like listening to description and just like really being transported.
Because I spent work on describing this
They
time.
were great. They were really super good. Like every time we arrived somewhere, it was like, oh yeah, tingles. So those were some of my favorite bits. Was those exposition moments, the planet reveal when you drop out of hyperspace. Eox. Yeah, that sound.
I really liked the space fish. Space salmon, or spammin, as I'd like to call them. On a serious note, I think the inter-character moments were some of the strongest. I really enjoyed Pinch in the very early moments, jumping up on Zahak's shoulders and being kind of like 10 foot tall. I thought that was real fun.
He likes to feel tall.
Yeah, he does. Oh, we should be remiss if we didn't base the characters partly on Junkrat and Roadhog from
Oh,
the
yeah.
the
I should have said that
Absolutely.
earlier. That was when I was reading the source book for the first time and reading the Yosoki, and I went, hell yeah.
Yeah.
This is Junkrat, who's my favorite Overwatch character, and so I was like, perfect. I know exactly what I'm doing here.
Nice.
I would also say the
Big, scary friend.
the ape meat.
Yeah, that was quite fun.
That was good fun. The diatribe that I gave, which one? The fucking prophecy on the ship was a lot of fun. Where I fucking picked up what Sean was putting down. So when the little hologram popped up the first time, and it was about the planet, I think it was. Oh no, it was her head.
It was
Ada's head.
Ada's bust, and then
That's
but it was
right.
coming up from the red and black disc.
Yeah, and the red and black disc was the symbol
of Devourer.
of the cult of the Devourer. And so I clocked that. Sean went into a nice bit of description, and I was like, holy fuck, this is about my character's religion. Fuck yeah, this is gonna be a cool story. And so when we were in the drift, ranting and raving like it's been prophesied, was a lot of fun. Being inside a big tummy
The
was
best
cool.
part was I hadn't Karma had not clued into that being a Culture of the Devourer sign. And so when Chris in character is like, the prophecy is coming true, Pinch had to be like, what? I don't care. Because I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Oh, that dinner scene. We're like, so about the cult.
Yeah.
How into that are you?
Yeah.
How invested are you in that?
Are you a practicing cultist? Or is it
Do you have
just
like a
dabble?
membership?
You
or-
dabble? Is it for like high seasons
Like
only?
non-practicing?
Are you just a cultural
Holidays
cult
only.
of the Devourer?
Yeah.
I absolutely should have fucking spaced you at that point.
Yeah.
Well-
Your answer is not sufficient. Please get
Come
on my ship.
What about you?
Well, that is what I was going to say as one of mine is the dinner sequence and Pinch stealing everybody else's food is one of my favorite moments. Just because it was, I had that awesome sleight of hand bonus and I used it every chance I got. And so that, and also the very early moment of stealing from the Vesk, who was selling the curry to Ada, where I got my magic space rocks from.
That's right.
Which then became important later on when I used them as a bargaining chip. So I liked that little through line there. But also I just loved the ending sequence. Like, it's also fresh because just listened to it, but I loved that it was a chance to use some of our cool skills and abilities without it necessarily being combat and doing things that we wouldn't really have the chance to do in combat because you're so focused on
Doing
the
damage,
specific
yeah.
end goal. We just got time to kind of show off and be fun with it, which I really, really enjoyed.
What is the... I have a question.
Sure.
Going back, what is the deal with Regis saying random words?
Oh yeah, that was my question because I wrote them all down and then they
That
didn't
is-
mean anything.
That is the one thing you missed. Is the one thing you missed because it's embedded in the season. At the very beginning, when I first described Regis, they were originally taken off market for being buggy.
Right, yeah.
Being
yeah.
very buggy, and you found one. So it's a fucking buggy AI
It's just
that you've
bad,
got.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's there to make you think there's something, but there's actually not.
No,
It's just
I
a
love
buggy
Regis.
AI
Yeah.
that I just popped into the beginning there.
And
to
it
be
was
like,
it was like infrequent enough. It's just like, we do what?
Yeah.
once you've forgotten about it, I'll bring it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there was only maybe 3
I
total.
think so,
Because
yeah.
I wrote them down and then I was looking at this and I was like, if this means something, we've completely missed
Yeah.
a huge clue
It
because
was
this
my
is not
favorite
connecting.
thing to watch people writing it down. I'd be like, it means fucking nothing, man.
And then we were like, did you just say X? And you're like, nope.
No.
He'd always be like, I said this and say the completely normal part and you're like, okay.
Oh yeah, I've got Regis banana cascading error.
Banana
Yeah.
cascading.
Banana
and,
cascading.
Yeah, I think
Galactic
I-
hammer.
Galactic
Yeah,
Hammer.
I guess from that, I think maybe I just assumed, you were
You
the
busted.
shit AI.
It was just
Maybe I should have tried to fix you, but
yeah, you never did. So
never
like,
did,
Keep
yeah.
You
going.
never fixed that raffle
part of
that
the
it's
charm.
caused.
Yeah, that's
But-
right.
Exactly.
I was going to say my favorite moment is like honestly, it's the fact that you all picked up the breadcrumbs. There's a thing that I'm obviously most like hesitant about on being a GM is being able to, because you want to be subtle with something, so not just spoon feed everything. But like, because even from the aspect of like saying, mentioning in the holo video with Sifa when you first meet her, there's the orange and yellow like buzzing glow, and then I leave that there, and then I describe in the free markets, and then there's a couple of lights and one of them's buzzing, and for a moment there you're all like, no, I have no idea, until Phil finally goes, wait a minute, and I was like, oh, so it's like moments of elation like that
Yeah.
kind of like validate the storytelling to go, cool, like the Cult of a Devourer stuff, seeing Chris click on that. And also I think the biggest one for me is ties into Ada's Ellen's favorite points, because the whole reason, the impetus for me making this story is that death is my number one fear, and I wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore death and legacy and like the ending of everything as a theme, because I hate it. So I wanted to explore what that's like. Somebody that knows that their time is ending, and what do they do with that time? Especially when they don't know how much time is left. So I thought that was just very like, it was good to have characters that can come along with that. But as far as my favorite actual moment, the fucking 10-minute video monologue that I gave that just kind of peppered in the story. That also then peppered in the glass serpent that you all clocked, but then forgot enough that by the time it
Yes.
comes in the end, because like if I pepper it in early enough, they should hopefully forget it because they'll be engaged by the revelation of Ada stuff. Then I can bring it back in.
Forget
You
we did.
always just assume there's more time.
Yeah. I remember writing down.
we need to go to low power.
We
mode.
need to go to low power. High power equals danger. underlining it multiple times and then getting lost in the rest of it and being like, I wonder what I was writing. I'm sure it's not important.
Yeah. I remember seeing everyone write it down. I was like, fuck. Just keep talking, keep going. All right. Should we go into some listener questions?
Let's.
Yes.
Nice.
Okay, see you guys. Question for Chris mostly. And this is an interesting one because I know what I feel like happens to the characters after. Does Ada make it back to the no wrong answers? Basically, what do you envision happened with Ada and Zahak post the ending of the season? And this comes from AZ.
I think the answer to that question is entirely in Ellen's court. Like I said earlier, Zahak's kind of motivations are super shiftable in terms of like how he goes about it. We didn't get a scene with Ada and Zahak alone, which I was kind of gunning for, which it kind of set my character up for in kind of service of the protagonist to do that. So in this moment, I think the answer is, does Ada accurately or effectively espouse the merits of kindness, compassion, love, not giving up, not feeling like trying to make meaning in potentially a meaningless universe, or knowing that there is meaning or whatever. If she doesn't, Zahak reverts to his nihilism and his apathy and his kind of hate towards the fact that there is no meaning. And if she does, then he has a change of heart. So it's fairly easy to convince Zahak he's wrong.
Nihilism all the way. No, I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. No. I think Ada's whole thing is hinged about curiosity and learning about others and trying to squeeze as much out of life as possible. And because of that, she has to believe that people can change. And not only that, there is the actual data that Zahak did save her life. And she saved Zahak's. And there is
they're linked.
Exactly. There is this sense there that nothing is ever writ in stone. So yeah, it would be a very tense,
tense ride back.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is, does Ada make it back, right? It's like, do you
does she drop dead right now?
I think the question is leaning at, like, does Zahak kill Ada, which I don't think he does.
I mean, it's that answer, right?
Still put up a fight.
Does she? I mean, Zahak wins in a combat stat wise. I've started my character in a really fucked up
I've
bullshit
got some
way.
pretty good spells.
I think strength 16 does.
Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
don't
good.
know. But you think he would
and
come to
Fury.
that?
No, and that's my thing. It could. It depends. It's really on Ada as a character to espouse the merits of being a good person. If she doesn't do it well and doesn't convince him, then he kills her and eats her and flies off to probably find Pinch and try and find the cult again. If she does, then he becomes tempered and begins an existential crisis, which is
Losing his faith and would go through a whole...
and is guided by her towards something different, something else.
Take some convincing to let Clink back, have Clink let him back on the ship.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because in my head, if we were to ever go towards a season 2, I would love to look at a version of it where they actually did, at the ending of the season, find that they went their separate ways, all 4.
Yeah.
But it would be in the same groupings as the chase. It would be what happens in the year that there are Zahak and Ada adventures, and where they learn to deal, because they're intrinsically linked now, and they need to navigate through that. It's literally the adventures of Regis and Clink for a while, and Dex. It's this weird trio, right?
Yeah.
And then does Pinch, what would it be like Pinch without Zahak for a while? Whether it's back with the free captains or doing their own thing. Then there's interesting stories you could tell individually before you then bring them all back together, which I think would be fascinating to
Get in the comments, request a season 2.
Yeah. There's always, the feeling with games like this, because they're usually geared to groups to play casually for years to come. That a party coming apart like that and a story going in separate ways is a big no-no. You can't tell that kind of story. But we don't really have that issue. We can have, even if we did come back for season 2, like you say, we can have the characters grow independently for a while before bringing them back, or bring back slightly different characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with it when you're not kind of tied to it being like a home game where everyone has to participate every single week.
That was definitely something I really enjoyed about the season in general, and enjoyed about it being a product for entertainment, was knowing there was a finite ending. Obviously, like especially for Chris and I's characters and stuff like that, it does just open it up so more to be like, we can be evil, we can be fucking evil, because it doesn't matter that we stay together for like you said, years and years.
Yeah.
What matters is we tell an interesting one shot of a story.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Speaking of which, AZ continues on. This is a question for Phil.
Oh.
How does it feel to still be the DM with the PC kills?
Yeah.
You wait.
Look, this obviously has been commented on quite a few times. Look, I don't go out to kill people. I try to make a good challenge. I try to make it dangerous where it's supposed to be dangerous. And sometimes people die.
He's being modest,
we've
guys.
had-
He's the evil one at the party.
We've had a lot of close calls.
had-
We were just talking today about we had several
close
close calls in Pulp Cthulhu. So Sean nearly offed at least one character there, but we just like and one was not ass pull like from you, but like ass pull from the mechanics, like just scraping the bottle of barrel.
the mechanic version of holding on by your fingertips.
Yeah, like
I mean, it was literally a 50-50 chance whether Chris survived among the dust or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When we
true.
pulled
Came
them
down
out
to
of the-
one roll.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm ready for other people to start doing the killing.
Hey, I tried.
Here I go killing again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still haven't died. I would like to die. That would be great.
Don't worry, Phil.
Same.
It will happen.
Hey, I got news for you, buddy.
It's coming for us
I
all.
got some good news. I got some bad news.
Oh, sick.
And you didn't like Zahak as a character.
the shit sandwich.
No, I was saying there was some bleed from Clink. Clink was mad at Zahak, and I felt that for like a week after recording.
Yes.
I like Zahak as a character. I think it's a great concept.
We've answered part of this, but this comes from Aramithius. By the way, all of this comes from our Rollcast Discord, so get in the Rollcast Discord to ask these sorts of questions. Zahak's emergence as a devourer cultist feels like an interesting part of the story that at first was almost an exposition machine, and then as quasi-antagonist. Was this something planned from the start? If not, how did Zahak's revelation with the plot involved? We've kind of answered that. We've touched on how I kind of formulated the story and then kind of retrofitted it to Zahak's involvement with the cult. And just to touch on that as well, is that there was a version of a story where it actually was the Eoxians.
Right.
Because it just makes
Right.
sense. They
Yes.
can be utilized as well. They're kind of tied to life and death and the undead as well.
Yeah.
And then with the emergence of Zahak and the cult, I go, well, it still makes sense to use them as a smoke screen because everyone would believe that it's the Eoxians.
Yeah,
Of course they
Yes.
would.
Yes.
So it made sense. There was a time when you all still thought it was.
Yes.
You distrusted the Eoxians from the beginning, and I was like, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Great.
inherently kind of like...
Suspicious types.
Yeah.
They're undead.
They're undead. They have...
Necromancers.
Their values are kind of an inversion
Yeah.
of your standard heroic tropes. So naturally, you're like, I'm not sure these guys are on the level.
I was going to say there's the because death is so interwoven in this story, but there's the thing of subverting death, but like it's not just a challenge over death. It's a question of meaning and a welfare of life rather. So you have that kind of like juxtaposition of the characters. So it's natural for all of the characters to be like, these Eoxians are a bit fucked. Even if we also want to combat death, this is not the way.
Yeah, I mean, the more I spoke to them, the more the kind of sympathetic they seem.
Well,
Yeah,
and the Eoxians
definitely.
as well were the first to join the pact.
Yeah.
They were the first planet to be like, yeah, we'll join. We'll engage in mutual trade and security. And everyone's
Yeah.
like, really?
I still don't trust them.
I'm the opposite. I was on board from the time that there was the moment where Arda spoke to them privately, and he spoke to the leader privately.
Yeah.
Gevalask Nor.
Gevalask, yeah.
Yeah.
And he gives back
He was nice.
He gave back the data pad straight away, and he was like, I just wanted to look at it. Everything's good. Like,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
This was a data
It's
pad
not-
of a very close friend of
Yes,
mine.
and it's also like, it's not their fault they're skeletons. You know? It's not their fault they just want to live.
They're so spoopy.
Skeletons.
I mean, it kind of is.
It's just a choice.
I don't mean to be
mean-
skeleton racist, but it is kind of their fault.
You're being bonus.
They just
I am
want-
being bonused.
They just wanted to live a little longer.
But jumping
Very
back
sympathetic,
to
yeah.
that question as well, it was fairly easy. I think Sean and I have played together for nearly 4 years now, right?
Yeah,
So
about that.
I can pick up what he's putting down pretty
Yeah.
quick, and I knew my role about that time when I knew the sigil. I was like, oh, I understand now. I kind of get what I'm supposed to do in this game. Let's see if what that is in kind of full depth, but I kind of had a heads up.
Yeah. And as I said, I'm just trying to get down to that one moment of the standoff, and I fucking got it.
You got that.
Also by Aramithius, how does it feel playing a sci-fi setting with almost entirely unadjusted magic? From my perspective, it sat a little awkwardly, but I'm curious what the play and thematic experience of it was like. Also worth mentioning, this is science fantasy, to be specific.
Yeah.
So there's a very deliberate melding of tech and magic. And kind of like sci-fi themes. So it definitely sits in science fantasy rather than a strict sci-fi like a Blade Runner or a Star Trek.
It felt like more technologically based this season.
I definitely leaned
Yeah.
more into that.
Yes.
It was labs and experiments, and there's a little bit of mysticism, and obviously there were spells, and we kind of revered our gods. We made sure that was kind of in there. So I don't know if that makes the magic stuff a bit awkward that we pushed it aside or something. But I didn't feel like it was a weird fit. I mean, I think because the whole setting is based around that idea, it's internally consistent to me, so I don't really mind it.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Star Wars, of just like, you have your space cowboys and your space wizards, and the both of them have a equal place in the story. And
Yes.
and not only that, it's a really good way to play off people's beliefs, because you have people who go, I've never been, the universe is so vast that it's like, well, I've never been touched by this is like not part of my culture or faith or religion or anything like that, and you can have someone across the stars who goes, well, this is baked into my culture and it always has been, and this is just a different way that the world works for us. So I always see it being kind of part and parcel, as well as like a lot of the magic I used was kind of techno.
Yours was very tech-based,
so
yeah.
it
Yes.
kind of made sense as an android. So
And it is a setting that lends itself to go, here's a lot of tech, here's a lot of magic, you can choose what part you engage with to tell your story. And so I deliberately honed in on a specific set.
That's definitely what I did. I didn't want to be a magic user character, but I was also, as someone who likes the technology side of it more, it was very easy to go, well, there's aliens and there's hundreds of different planets with different species. Some of them have powers that not everyone will understand. If you want to call that magic, cool. Otherwise, it's just a type of technology that's like a little bit more abstract than ours. You know?
I also just love the kind of license it gives the creators. I love things like the Vortex and the Diaspora and the whole idea of Eox and remixing undead into their own planet nation thing. I think it's worth any kind of awkwardness to get that kind of creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely not science fiction in the strictest. It's space fantasy.
Yeah.
It's a space opera.
It's not The Expanse, right?
No.
It's closer, like you say, to Star Wars or to
you have the Force and
to Mass Effect, where there are psionics, or even something like Warhammer 40k or StarCraft. Where there are psionics or things like that,
Yeah.
or the warp. Or,
Science fantasy is definitely where it sits.
Yeah.
And I'll pay my respects to some of the people who have asked questions that we've kind of answered a little bit. If we have any little bits, we'll rock through
for
some
sure.
of these. So Hurricane Hawk asked us the same question they've asked us on previous iterations of this show. What was your favorite single piece of roleplay from the season? We've touched on a few of those. Are there any other highlights that we wanted to bring up?
I really enjoyed the murder talk. That was fun. Being able to go full nihilist on a character is a delight to play. I don't get to do it terribly often.
Yep.
So that was fun.
I loved every piece of Regis interaction I got to do. I feel
Yeah.
like, especially like, also
love that little robot.
Also flexing like the capabilities of Regis, especially like developing a friend in Arda, I think was fun. I think Regis giving Arda advice was one of my personal favorites of the season.
I like the free captains. I thought they were cool characters. With cool voice work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely.
Lots of Pinch just doing stupid shit. It's very fun. Like, just the whole, I still can't get over guns in the mouth pouch, because like, I believe I asked, and you said there's like there's no like the safety's not off.
Oh, no,
like,
no.
They're ready to fire.
I need the
and
fastest
and I was
access
just
possible.
I was like, I'm wondering if there's like a crit fail, whether a gun will like just shoot through Pinch's cheek or
Jesus
something. I was ready for that kind of
Ready for
chaos.
antics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, Pinch with the space rocks and how devastated he was when he needed to give them up.
His only like genuine moment, honestly.
I know, it was so funny and so sweet, and I was here for it.
But my favorite is our
Yeah.
conversation.
I just remember you
about
giving
death.
like a little
Fist bump.
afterwards, and I was
Yeah.
like, ooh,
There's
a fist bump.
an extra aspect to this question that Tiger Claw asked. So first, why did Zahak and Pinch join the No Wrong Answers? And did their characters have any inkling of the importance of Arda Prime? I would say from the get-go, no. Because
Definitely not the importance of
No.
her. That never even
No.
crossed Pinch's mind
No.
at all.
I think you joined us because I advertised for crew on the Absalom station, and you
for cheap.
answered.
I was going to say for Pinch, the answer is what it always is, which is money.
Yeah.
It seemed like
Credits.
it seemed like a great place to just bunker down for a bit while I'd left the free captains. I didn't have a lot else going on, and
And a lot of it's still morally grey, so it's not like you're going straight. Like, there's still like
No.
certain things you do that are like, this isn't
no.
technically
Joining this
lawful.
crew was never him thinking this is the end of my life of crime. It was like, well, maybe it's a little bit more legit, but ultimately these people are looking into. Clearly, you guys have already starting to look into some very mysterious stuff around Arda, and he wants to see where that might lead, and it might get him somewhere interesting.
I think as well, they're adventurers. They go on adventures. They've gone on adventures before. An adventurer is just a fancy way of saying a murder tourist. We go to strange new planets and we kill people there. So Zahak is down for that. Plus, they don't seem to be terribly emotionally intelligent when it comes to sensing motives.
Yeah,
which,
no, neither of us.
Yeah, I think that would have been a win for
Which
both of
is
us.
pretty fucking great. I can imagine the meeting where it's like, oh, cool, I've got a bead on you guys. Well, I'm just going to move my shit in. And there might have been a tiny bit of like, oh my goodness, that's moving fast. It's like, okay, yeah. Where are we going next? Right, and it's like just like push past.
We
and
settled in like we'd been there forever.
Yeah.
direct these two, don't you think?
Yeah.
Must be
yeah.
a cultural thing.
Yeah, and those sorts of excuses and that sort of thing. I can imagine that's the kind of context of like,
Pinch liking that he can be his true bizarre self and people aren't going to question it for the first time.
It
Yeah.
fits in.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
the weirdest person
I'm
on
not
this
the
shit.
weird one. I love it.
And I think you discovered what importance Arda had, like, along with the rest
Of
of
course,
us, right?
yeah.
Yes.
At the same time that we all
With
did,
Arda,
really.
yeah.
The Over-Archiver asks, for me, was it planned for Seafeld to die? And if not, what plans or interactions involving her could we have gotten to see if she had survived the free market shootout? That was one of those things that I accounted for. It was, if Seafeld dies, Seafeld dies. If Seafeld doesn't, she leads you to the Eoxian embassy. She gets like taken away into like deep undercover. They're there to protect her, right? So she's like taken in by the Eoxian.
She's in the witness protection.
Yeah, exactly. She gives you the data pad freely, but doesn't get time to like give you the importance of it before they whisk her away because she's still in fucking danger. And then you would have actually gotten a message from Gevalask Noah during like later in the adventure, because the way that transmissions work is they're not live. You get them. Is that she was assassinated?
oh, so she does die.
She
The
will
plan
die.
is for her to die.
And then what I was hoping at that point is if you get that message from Gevalask Noor, you then suspect the Eoxians again.
Yeah, that would have turned us
Right,
fully.
yeah.
Back to the
against
Eoxians, and you're on Eox. So then it's just that was that little thing that I was gonna
Yeah.
put in. But because she died, I'm like, oh, this kind of saves me having to do that.
Does she feel bad about what she did?
Oh yeah, the reason that
she seems
She seemed pretty remorseful, yeah.
she's remorseful and like couldn't even look at Arda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that whole sequence
I just thought
early
she was
on being
android
like,
racist.
literally, I was like, she's got something about androids. Turns out it was just Arda.
Which is like, yeah, but I was totally, like, oh, yep, this is my first experience because, like, people find androids weird and off-putting. And I was like, cool. This is like, not a new experience.
No,
but,
it's that person I tortured.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, and how was I to suspect it? If
do
you
find
guess that
androids-
right off the bat, you're a fucking
What if you just
paranoid
gone up to her
wreck.
and been like, you did this to me, didn't you?
Did what? She doesn't even know.
People do find androids weird and annoying. We should get rid of them. Find some way of getting rid of all of them at the same time.
Man, if you hadn't have
Plus
engaged with that,
Every fucking other person on the fucking fucking universe ever.
That's fine.
I loved when
New
I
universe,
It
new
reminds
universe.
me so much of Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, why
Yeah.
would you care if the universe is
because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it.
fucking yeah.
But I love there's that moment. Actually, that might be a question I have for you, Chris.
Yo.
Real quick, were you just straight up lying to Pinch? Because I ask in that moment.
Yes.
Pinch,
Yes, this is my question too.
Oh, great. I was like, Pinch doesn't want to die. Does Zahak have a way out for the two of them? And your only answer was,
Zahak is not suicidal.
Zahak is not suicidal. And then you refused to say any more.
So-
what was that about?
Less. Yeah.
Here's two answers
like a
to that
greater
question.
calling, right?
Here's two answers to that question. One, Chris misunderstood what Sean was talking about and fundamentally did believe that it would only be the androids.
Right.
So my whole turn on Zahak, you didn't understand why it was happening.
I thought you had it. I thought that was a legitimate question, and I thought I had the read of the situation.
I see.
And so I was like, oh no, it will just be the androids. It's cool. And then my in-character, Chris is not misunderstanding Sean.
The canon reason.
Is no, Zahak is not suicidal. You detected that correctly. So we're gonna escape through the fucking portal that springs up every 6 months.
That's a gamble, but yeah, you could have. Yeah.
He's like, I have predicted it will open in the next 4 seconds.
Yeah.
What if it doesn't? Well, you won't be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, you won't know any
Pinch
different.
goes, and what if it doesn't? And Zahak's like, then it will be too late.
Yeah.
I thought you were just doing like a semantic dodge where you're like, I'm not
Yeah.
suicidal.
Well-
I'll die as a consequence.
Well,
I'm not
exactly,
suicidal. I'm homicidal.
Yeah, or just like, would if that's your greater calling,
Yeah.
like that's not suicide. Like, would
That's
you,
self-sacrifice.
exactly.
Yeah.
Would you see the ascension, being, you
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I saw
that was
it on
my
that term.
in-character assumption was he means it as he will go to whatever afterlife the cult of the Devourer believes in.
Yes.
And that's Pinch realizing, I'm not part of your fucking religion. I'm gonna die.
Yeah, wait,
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Are there plus ones?
Plus one to heaven, or
Yes, there are. New universe, baby.
We got a few other comments that were less questions, but were more like lovely, positive affirmations that we've
Let's
got from
read them
people.
out,
and
shall we?
We will quickly rocket through them because we are heading over time.
Oh, no.
So one of them comes from Over Archiver, which is a particular favorite was Zahak, episode 16. That's all they'll say because spoilers. Listen to the episode if you haven't. I can't remember what it is
this
at the
whole
moment.
thing
That's
is
fine.
a spoiler.
Absolutely
Fucking
chilling.
episode.
Also, the finale was really cool, especially in terms of mechanics, which usually isn't the main reason I listen to RTC, brackets, the characters and story moments and all that are, but they absolutely shined, whatever, you get the point.
I feel like 16 is where you convince Dr. Spoon
Yes.
that all is lost.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
That's
It's like-
messed up.
Wow, that's dark.
It's messed up, yeah.
A couple of the other ones, let's just rocket through those like a spaceship. Really loved how the chase mechanics played out. That was by Jason Elias. The Overarchive also said, the whole sequence was awesome. In particular, I loved how the players directly affected the narrative, described the areas they found themselves in, etc.
Oh, didn't someone ask where you got that from?
Jason Ellis asks this question.
Jason Ellis. I changed it up a bit, but it comes from Starfinder's first adventure path, which is Dead Suns, which is, again, a whole story around the cult of a devourer. Completely different from that, there's a whole chase sequence where they're being chased by dinosaurs. So they're on Castrofel, the jungle planet, and they're chased by dinosaurs, and it's a stampede, essentially. And so I took both tables, one for the DM, the GM rather, and one for the players, and I changed up a few of them, changed the wording of a few of them, changed some of the stats, but the things are basically the same. You have to get 12 successes between the four of you for certain things, and that's how you got it. So that's where I got it from. I grabbed that because that was my soul for, I always knew I wanted you to face a horde, but I didn't know how to do that without just going into combat against 1,000 people.
without
Which
creating
would
a
have been-
total party kill.
And I also didn't want to do like a Pulp Cthulhu style like chase sequence, and then I found these mechanics in it when I deep dived into the book. I was like, fucking perfect.
I was also wondering, so Skyver619 asks, is Pinch gone forever? Rejoin the free captains. Maybe they turn him in for a bounty. Does he regroup with the no long answers? Is it up for me to decide on my headcanon? So what do you think Pinch does next?
If you would like to make your own third party story,
if you would
just
like to
about
tell me
Pinch.
what Pinch does
There you
next,
go.
I am taking suggestions. I don't, to narrow it down slightly, because I don't know exactly what he does, but I don't
It's because he doesn't know.
Yeah, he very rarely knows what he's about to do next until it's happening, and then he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm in the middle of something." I don't think he fully rejoins the free captains because they're a bit too structured for him. He doesn't love all those rules.
Your free captain's not free enough.
No, not free enough. He's like, "You don't want me to betray you guys, and I can't hold to that. I'm not committing to that."
Don't pin me down like that.
Yeah.
Wow, you asked for so much.
He's like, "Sure, I'll be a free captain." Fingers crossed behind his back. But yeah, other than that,
So wherever the wind blows.
honestly, whatever
makes sense.
looks the most enticing next.
Wherever he literally
Hell yeah.
just goes to another planet and tries to start
Probably,
again.
yeah.
That pretty much brings us to the end of a season. First of all, genuinely, thank you guys so much for coming along with the story and making it very fucking easy
It
to
was
tell
a
sci-fi
so well
story.
told.
Yes.
And it like gets to a point where it's like, oh, there was just moments where I could just literally step back and let you guys roleplay, and that's so much fun and like so much of a privilege to be able to do. Just be like, oh, cool, they know their characters, they know the story. I can just let them fucking roll.
And a big congratulations to you, Sean, because you not only ran the game, you also edited the game. You edited the podcast, which I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity. If you, listener out there, loved this season, consider going to our Patreon so we can financially support Sean and his
Herculean effort.
Every episode roughly takes 2 to 3 times that long to edit it. Is that about right, Sean?
Like,
Yeah, there you go.
He's so tired.
There you
He's
go.
so tired from
like
doing
I would
it all.
say minimum 4 hours.
There you go.
Max 6.
There you go. Every episode. So if you
All those
like
cool
that,
sound effects you heard,
Yeah.
all that growling from the zombies.
He did that. He did some Foley
Sean-
for this episode. That's Sean
Sean and
growling
another
in the
actor
last.
who
That's
lives
me
in
and
our
my
house.
my other housemate Hjalmar. We spent just 10 minutes in here going. And
As
then
you
just
do.
Did
modulated
I
it.
help at all?
I kept yours in
spirit. Yeah.
So if you want to support that, if you want to congratulate that or thank that, head to our Patreon. We really, really appreciate it.
Do it.
Every single member of our Patreon has our thanks, our gratitude, and our love. So thank you to everyone who supported us and made this season possible.
But of course, we aren't done. Let's talk about what's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. So for those of you in the know, after the post-season episode, we always have an interview episode, and we do have that lined up. We better have. And so myself and Ellen will be sitting down with James L. Sutter. Now, James L. Sutter was there from the very beginning of Starfinder, involved with Paizo Publishing between 2004 and 2017 as their very first creative director for the Starfinder game, and was essential in launching the game from the ground up and their early creative direction. So we'll get to talk to them on where they were, what they did, and where they are now. Great way to kind of just delve into the mind of another creative mind behind your favorite TTRPGs.
Yeah, we love doing that.
But the
And
week
then-
after that, I will pass over to Ellen to talk about what is going to be season 9.
Yes, so it's back to me. It's my seat, my turn in the GM seat again for Roll to Cast, and we will be doing Die, the RPG written by Kieran Gillen, illustrated by Stephanie Hans, and produced by Rowan Rook and Deckard Games. It is a dark fantasy about very, very flawed people in the real world who sit down to play a tabletop role-playing game and find that the game is playing them a little bit.
Goth Jumanji.
It's Goth Jumanji. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And not only we bid adieu to our wonderful guest Karma, who has been amazing as always. It's always a pleasure to have him here in the studio. And we will be welcoming 2 new guest players, which is very, very exciting.
2 more Adelaide-based performers.
Yes. We have Max Garcia Underwood,
Who you may remember that voice. that
Exactly.
name.
Yeah, that name. He has somewhat appeared on Rollcast before because he scored our season of The Witcher TTRPG. His beautiful music scores that season. And we have Luna Godfrey, who is an amazing Adelaide-based TTRPG person. You might know her as Lou Boffin on Twitch. She's recently done a whole slew of Jasper's Game Day. But yeah, very, very, very awesome TTRPG person. And yeah, so it's a new for Roll to Cast because we've got 2 guest stars. So
2 for the price of 1.
I know. Yeah, we got
It's
a
a big
great
old
deal.
citizen.
Great deal. It was a good find. So yeah, that will be after our interview. So stay tuned for that.
So thank you all so much. Thank you, Karma. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you,
Thank
Sean.
you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
And
you,
thanks to our
Sean.
listeners.
Thank you,
Thank
listeners.
you,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
We're looking forward to seeing you next week and then beyond that for another season.
Woo.
We'll see you all later.
Tell a friend.
You have been listening to Among the Dust, which is a Roll to Cast production. The best way to find us is on Twitter, Discord, and our Patreon. All our podcasts are on Acast, Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcatchers. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/roll-to-cast. Starfinder and all associated properties are trademark of Paizo Incorporated, authorized through Paizo's community use policy. The way I kind of envision it is I'm thinking of 3 things simultaneously. So I've got that melody and I'm not sure what... Instrumentation's hard, so I kind of just have to go by the pitch of my voice. I don't like that triplet actually. No, see, I don't like that. No, I don't like it going down either. See, that's what I mean. So what's my trial and error is like, and you might find what works better, but I believe it's more. Every time. One sec.